The 345th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
And that could make a difference. Lawson at the buzzer. Got it! Maybe not. Ty Lawson wins it at the buzzer.
Deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Gets the roll. Here we go. Page has it. Carolina down one. 84-83. Page into the front court with 4 seconds. Page to the rim. Got it! Got it! 9/10 of a second to go. Inbounds. Washington gets it to Warren. His full court shot. No good. Marcus Page baby. Does it for the Tar Heels. Carolina wins it.
Don't force it if you're Goss.
Comes in. Blocked by Meeks. Buried up ahead to Jackson. And he dunks it down for the 5-point lead. Matthews off the mark. And this year the confetti is going to fall for North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time. Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the show. Josh and Anthony back with you guys on a Sunday. Here to get you ready for Carolina and Miami. That game will come your way tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. in the Smith Center, the first of 3 straight home games for Carolina, the last 3 home games of the season. Quick turnaround for the Heels coming off of yesterday's massive win at Virginia. And so we'll talk about Miami, update you on everything Carolina-wise, revisit the first matchup between these two teams before we give our keys to the game, and so much more. But we start every edition of the pod, as we always do, with the pod thought of the day. We go to Chuck Knox for today's thought, and it's, quote, attack your responsibilities with energy and enthusiasm, give a maximum effort at all times, and never permit yourself to become discouraged. You know, when you listen to Hubert Davis talk, he's a very energetic, he's a very enthusiastic guy, very upbeat, very positive to be a head coach. A lot of head coaches are grumpy and miserable, and frankly, that's how I liked him growing up as a kid, but it is a change of pace, hearing a guy that is a little bit more just upbeat and positive, and that's definitely Hubert Davis. But something he talks about is, you know, giving 100% effort, competing in everything that this team does on and off the court. And I think that's something that we can say for this team, no matter when they fell short at Georgia Tech, at Syracuse, and those losses were definitely frustrating and disappointing. We haven't come away, at least in my opinion, in the game this year, concerned about the effort. And you go back to the first 2 years, a lot of times when they got beat, it was the effort was the biggest reason why we were getting beat and talking about losses. You know, it wasn't too long ago we heard Caleb Love admit after a game at Notre Dame, I didn't try hard in the first half. Like that was something that we had to deal with not too long ago. And, you know, with something that's made this team so much enjoyable to watch is, for the most part, every night that they've walked on the basketball court, we've expected to get their best effort. And we've gotten that, and it's led Carolina to a 21-6 mark, and they're top of the ACC standings with 4 games left to go. And this team, it looks like and it feels like, maybe is rounding into form as we get closer and closer to the start of March.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to feel like that a little bit. That dip in the middle of the season is potentially behind this team, and I think, you know, that game at Virginia was so huge and really was, I think, the determining factor as to whether or not Carolina had sort of put that 2 and 3 stretch behind them. Because, it was good to win at home against Virginia Tech. You won the game by 15, but that was one that it felt like because you were at home, a lot of people didn't know if you could judge the team off of that. When you then follow that by going on the road after the week off, that allows you to sort of recollect yourself, get your legs back, and correct some of the issues that we saw during that 5-game stretch. You really wanted to see what the team would look like out there in Charlottesville, and to go up there to end that streak, it now feels like this team is really starting to look like the team that we think can potentially make a run to Phoenix, that has a chance to win a national championship, especially if things break right. So this is, the type of team that we were hoping Carolina would be at this point of the season. And now hopefully they're going to get a chance to show that here on Monday night against Miami.
Yeah, the Miami game is the next game on the schedule. And I think when we got the schedule back in late August, early September, whenever it was, we viewed this game as a game that was probably going to play a role in the ACC regular season race. And it still is, with Carolina being in first. But Miami, you could argue, has been the biggest disappointment in the ACC, and is one of the biggest disappointments nationally. You're talking about a team that was highly regarded in the preseason. Many people thought had the makings to not just get back to the NCAA tournament, but advance deep into the field. And instead, they find themselves, they're 15-13. They're 6-11 in the ACC. They've lost 4 straight road games, 6 straight games overall, including losing to Carolina a little over 2 weeks ago. You can look at injuries as a big reason why they are where they are. A lack of depth is a big reason they are where they are. But no one saw this coming. When Carolina faced this team 2 weeks ago, like at the time they weren't a tournament team, but I think you expected Miami to just round into form because Jim Larrañaga is a Hall of Fame, caliber head coach. He's done wonders with that program, having taken them to a Final Four. They've won ACC regular season and tournament titles. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't come together this year. With that being said, they're looking for something to salvage what's become a lost season, and a win on the road at Carolina would definitely qualify as such. They have 4 players averaging double-figure scoring, led by their big man Norchad Omier, 17.1 points per game, 9.7 rebounds, 1.3 assists. He shoots 58% from the field, 37% from 3. Matthew Cleveland, the Florida State transfer, 13.8 points, 5.8 rebounds, 1.7 assists. He's shooting 50% from the field, 36% from 3. Wooga Poplar, one of the best names in all of college basketball, 13.7 points, 4.9 rebounds, 2.1 assists. He's shooting 44% from the field, 41% from 3. And Nigel Pack averages the same points per game at 13.7, 2.6 rebounds, 3.6 assists. He's shooting 41% from the field, 36% from 3, but has not played in their last 2 games. It is uncertain if he'll be on the court and be available for them tomorrow. And if he isn't, it definitely changes the way this game is going to be played. As a team, they shoot 37% from behind the 3-point line. And something we talked about in the first matchup, they don't foul very often. Teams just average making 9.8 free throws per game against them. That's the 7th fewest in the country. And teams just attempt 13.6 free throws against them. That's also the 7th fewest in the country. I mentioned the 6 straight losses, 4 straight losses on the road. And one of those losses was to Carolina at home in the process. Since then, this team has just completely unraveled. I mean, they got blown out by Duke, on Wednesday night, lost by 30. Now, over the weekend, they lost at home to Georgia Tech. And something that Georgia Tech hasn't done is gone on the road and win very much this season. And so, they come in off the rails. But as we learned in the first game, and as we've learned over his time in Miami. Jim Larrañaga is going to have them prepared. He knows how to play against Carolina as well as anybody that isn't at a blue blood program. And I still think with all the negativity surrounding them, they're going to pose some sort of a challenge for Carolina to deal with tomorrow night.
Well, I mean, yeah, one, you've got, as we talked about in the first matchup, they've got guards that can just stretch the floor. And so that's something that Carolina has to be prepared for. It's, a group that attacks sort of Carolina's weaknesses that we saw, down in that 5-game stretch. And, you could say even throughout the year at times are teams that are really for a round one. And that is exactly what this team is. The other thing that, factors in here is that, as you mentioned, they've lost 6 straight. At some point, teams that lose like that, especially teams that have talent, because this is a talented roster. There are guys on this roster that we thought were going to be really, really good players for them this year. And scoring-wise, if you look at the averages, you would think this is a group that can score it with just about anybody in the country. They're still averaging 77 points per game, which is 85th in the country. So, I mean, that's the danger that I think lies in this game. You have to go on the road there as well. This is going to be a matchup that Carolina can't come in and just expect that they're going to roll out of here with a victory, because, yeah, there is a possibility that this team is quit. I mean, especially with the goals that they probably had coming into the season. I know, losing a guy like Isaiah Wong, that a lot of people thought there might be a little bit of a step back. Same thing, Jordan Miller. But I do think a lot of people believed with some of the guys that they were bringing in, with Wooga Poplar returning, that this would be a team that could potentially be one of the favorites to win the conference and could be the favorite in the conference because of what they've done in recent years to make a run in the NCAA tournament. So for them, I mean, on the other side, it's going to be all about their mindset. But Carolina's got to come into this game expecting that this is a team that's going to fight, that this is a team that's going to want to, play desperate to win a game before the end of the regular season. And look, it wouldn't, erase everything that they've done, but beating a top 10 team would certainly feel good for this squad and for Jim Larrañaga. So, yeah, it's all going to be all about how Carolina comes prepared for this game on a short turnaround. The good news is the last time that Carolina had to handle this, it was on the road, and it was in a game against a team that had a lot more to play for than Miami does at this point. So I think, Carolina should be ready for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Miami's just in spoiler mode, looking for something to salvage what's become a lost season for them. And I'll reference something I heard Gary Parrish say on the Ion College Basketball podcast. He was talking about, whenever teams return a lot of production, they get put in the high rankings and much is expected of them because you're returning so much. And even with the losses of Jordan Miller and Isaiah Wong, the ACC Player of the Year, I mean, you were still returning core members of a Final Four team, but it's not the same team. And I think Miami is a good example of that, kind of like how Carolina was last year, when they returned 4 key starters from a team that made the national title game. You can return the same players. You're not returning the same team. And sometimes that's a hard lesson to learn, and we learned it the hard way. And it appears that Miami is learning it the hard way this year. You look at this game from Carolina's perspective, 21-6, 13-3 in the league. They are atop the ACC standings with 4 games left to go. They've got a game lead over their rival Duke. Of course, we got the return game at Cameron coming up on March 9th. With the game being on Sunday, Carolina hasn't moved in the AP poll, so they're still 10th in the country in the polls, but they're 8th in KenPom and they're 9th in the net. They're still being respected by the metrics even after a 54-44 win at Virginia over the weekend. In Chapel Hill, this has been, like a lot of teams, are just different because they're so much better. They're 11-1 at home this season, and they average 90 points per game in the Smith Center, and scoring, including their last game where they scored 96 in the win over Virginia Tech. The Heels have 4 players averaging double-figure scoring. led by R.J. Davis and his 21 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists. He's shooting 42% from the field, 40% from three. Armando Bacot, second on the team in scoring, 14.4 points, 10.4 rebounds. He's shooting 56% from the field. Harrison Ingram, third on the team in scoring, 12.3 points, 9.1 rebounds, 2.2 assists. He's shooting 44% from the field, 40% from three. And then Cormac Ryan, the last guy to average double figures. He's averaging 11.1 points per game, 2.9 rebounds, 1.4 assists. But slowly but surely, he's starting to raise his field goal percentage. He's now shooting 37% from the field, 33% from three. Those numbers aren't sexy, but they have risen over the last 2 weeks or so, as it appears the super senior is rounding into form. And lastly, something that we've talked about at length, and it'll be a factor in this game. Carolina averages 41.1 rebounds per game. That is the 8th most in college basketball. So we've set the scene for Carolina and Miami round 2. Coming up next, we'll actually revisit that first matchup down in Coral Gables. We'll talk about the possible letdown factor before we get to our keys to the game and pick the game. But first, Anthony's got to deliver a message from Autograph.
That's right. And guys, do you want to get rewarded for listening to our show or reading our articles? Well, the team at Autograph, co-founded by Tom Brady, is redefining the fan experience by letting users earn points for the acts of fandom that they take every day, like listening to the show or reading the articles through our website. The Autograph Fandom app gives you access to your favorite UNC content all in one place and offers rewards like tickets, exclusive merchandise, and more. They got an email yesterday from my girl Megan over there at Autograph, and she told me that they are getting ready to drop the tickets for the game against NC State. So, guys, you could get a chance to go to the game against NC State just for signing up and getting this app. Head over to the Apple App Store and search for Autograph Fandom Rewarded. Download it for free, and make sure you use the referral code HEELTOUGH. That's HEELTOUGH, all one word, all lowercase. Link and code will also be in our podcast description on the audio edition. So make sure you guys check that out. We'd greatly appreciate it, and get yourself a chance to go to one of these games. They're going to want to do the same thing again at the end of the regular season. I think they're hoping to send someone to Durham for the Duke game. So plenty of great opportunities there, guys.
Let's get back into the Miami preview. By revisiting the first matchup, Carolina won at Miami a little over 2 weeks ago, 75-72, in a game that, Carolina built a double-digit lead in the first half, saw it go away. They actually trailed at halftime, built another double-digit lead in the second half, and had to hold off for dear life because Carolina did not make a field goal over the last 4 minutes of the game. But it was a game where Carolina made 11 three-pointers to really overcome an inefficient shooting day. They won the rebounding margin, but, this was, you talked about the way that Miami spreads Carolina's guards out and they drive them. Carolina gave up 38 points in the paint as Norchad Omier and Nigel Pack had big first halves but were limited in the second half. And, there's some things that you like from what Carolina did in that game that you want to see carry over. Like if Carolina makes 11 threes, if Carolina wins the rebounding margin, it most likely, would allow them to put themselves in a position to win the game. But if you give up more than, if you get outscored by 14 points or more, again, points in the paint wise, maybe you find yourself in a game that's closer than it should be, and because maybe Miami gets better looks from behind the 3-point line, and they make a few more of them. And so, there was a lot to like from what Carolina did that you want to see replicated in this matchup, but there was also some areas that needed to be cleaned up, and I think that's why Hubert Davis was so excited to have that week off, because Carolina's defense definitely looked the part on Saturday against Virginia. So with this game, not having the the implications we thought they were going to have back in the early parts of the season. This has the recipe for a letdown. It's a short turnaround. It's one of the hardest. It's a great test for the NCAA tournament because you're going to play and turn around and play again in 36 to 48 hours. So Carolina actually has one less day than they had, between the Clemson game. But, we saw Carolina not be able to get up in the game against the Tigers. Should we be concerned about that happening in this game, or do we think that Carolina will be locked in and ready to go from the opening tip? Because, Carolina has some work to do and they need some help to become a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But if you lose this type of game, no matter what you do the rest of the way, it's hard to put yourself in a position to be a 1 seed in the tournament. So, and this game could cost you a regular season title. So, how concerned should Carolina fans be with a possible letdown coming tomorrow night?
I mean, I don't think you should be too concerned about it. I mean, maybe just in terms of the energy, but even that, I mean, Carolina had a week off, so they should be still pretty well rested from that. And you would imagine that the energy is going to be there right out of the gate in this game. Because, look, I think if, let's say that the last 2 games that Virginia played had been reversed, I would then probably be a little bit concerned, because if Carolina had went up there, blew them out, then you're kind of wondering, okay, this team might be feeling itself a little bit too much again, having to turn around quickly and go on the road to a team that's 2 games over 500. But honestly, I think that a lot of the guys on the team probably saw that game the way we saw it. Yeah, you found a way to win the game up there. You did some good things defensively, but that was far from the best basketball that we've played. We still didn't shoot the ball well, especially, a guy like RJ Davis, he's going to be motivated to respond from a game where he made 1 field goal the entire time. So I think this is going to be a team that's going to be still motivated to prove that there's more to them than what we saw the other night. I do think you'll see a group that'll probably be more confident on the defensive end of the floor than they had been in those past 5 or 6 games, because that was a game that you saw good communication. You heard it from Hubert Davis, great rim protection from the guys inside. So I think there is a chance that there could be a letdown. There always is whenever you have this quick of a turnaround, especially with it no longer being as normal as it felt like it was a few years ago. But I think this is still a team that's going to be motivated, because there's no way that they feel like they played the cleanest game the other night up there in Charlottesville.
Yeah, I mean, Hubert said it after the game on Saturday that he was going to allow them to enjoy it up until the team pulled back into, the Smith Center. And I think that was the right approach, because I think for what that game meant on Saturday, mentally, you got to let the guys enjoy it for, an extended period of time, just because there was so much talk going into the game of, can you win the streak? And with what happened with Duke losing earlier in the day, even though they probably weren't aware of that, like, they knew that game was going to play a major factor regardless in the ACC regular season title race. And so this is where you hope that veteran experience and that presence shows up, where when the team when the team bust back in late last night, it was on to Miami. Because you're not going to really have a practice. You're basically going to have a walkthrough and a shoot around, and you'll go out there and play. And you're hoping that, with you being the 5th oldest team in the country, you don't have the Clemson thing happen again, where you just come out not ready to go and get punched in the mouth. And I think I've never wavered with this team, so I think we'll see the team we've seen at home come out and be ready to play and play at a high level from the opening tip. Let's not waste any time, guys. Let's get to our keys to the game. And the first one I wrote down was win the battle of the bigs. You go back to the first matchup, Norchad Omier had 20 and 11 in 37 minutes. He was 7 of 17 from the field. But Armando Bacot, despite not scoring with Norchad Omier, held his own and had a double-double in his own right. He had 10 points, 15 rebounds in 37 minutes before ultimately fouling out late in the game. And that was in a stretch for Armando, who, despite not playing at a high level, has had double-doubles now. I think it's in 5 or 6 of his last games. We know Norchad's going to be a problem. He's right up there with Bacot and Filipowski for being the best big, but he's the only big that Miami has. Carolina's got 2. I thought Jalen Washington and what he did on Saturday against Virginia was a nice sign of him resurging, because Carolina's going to need him to play a big role off the bench for this team to conclude the regular season and as we get ready for conference play. You want to limit the impact that Omier has, because he was simply dominant in the first half for Miami 2 weeks ago. But if Carolina's 2 bigs can better Miami's bigs and win the battle on the interior, do what they did on Saturday against Virginia, and provide a great rim protection and great rebounding, I think it does a world of wonders for Carolina on the defensive end of the court, doing what they need to do to put themselves in position for victory.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's gonna be tough. There's no doubt about it, because even during this down stretch, Omier has been playing very, very well. He has definitely developed himself into an even better big than he was last year when they ended up making the run. So I think, the thing is, in the first matchup, I just thought that Carolina kind of let him get to his spots. The biggest thing in this game that Carolina has to do, and with Pack potentially not playing, it might be a little bit easier, is there's times you're going to have to double him to get the ball out of his hands. And, look, they've got guys that can shoot on the perimeter, but if you don't have Nigel Pack and instead you're switching in Keyshawn George, who missed the first matchup, look, he's a solid player that they really like, but it's definitely not the same type of player as Nigel Pack, who can really light it up and create his own scoring very easily. So I think, for Carolina, Armando Bacot's going to have to bring it. The biggest thing for him is he's got to stay out of foul trouble. But, I'm interested to see, can Jalen Washington build off of that performance? Because he's going to have to play at some point in this game. I would be shocked if he's probably not playing right at double-digit minutes. Maybe if it's not, it's somewhere still in that 8 to 9 minute range. So he's going to be out there for a pretty decent period of time. How does he hold up, especially if he has to be out there on the floor with Omier? The other thing is I thought in the first matchup we didn't see enough of it at times. I want to see Armando Bacot, go after him, because I think that Armando – I know Omier is a great player, but I don't think Omier is the greatest defender that Armando is going to see amongst the big men. He's a solid defender. There's no doubt about that. But I still think that Armando can match him in terms of his physicality. I don't think we saw enough of that in the first matchup. Now, part of it is that you have to actually give him the ball. That would help. But I do think that this could be one of those games where if Armando can match his physicality and maybe even sort of outbid, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. If he can sort of go after him on that end of the floor, especially offensively, then I think there's a good chance that Carolina can win this game.
Yeah, look, I thought Armando went blow for blow with Norchad Omier in the first game when he was given the ball. And you go back to that matchup, there was 6 to 8 possessions where Armando got possession or position and just was never rewarded with, a touch on the post. And so, because if you go back in the second half when Carolina surged again and retook the lead and made it a double-digit game, who was the one that was fueling it on both ends of the court? It was Armando Bacot. And so, I think after Armando said, the ACC runs through me, he hasn't shied away from going at the best bigs in the conference, Flip, PJ Hall, Norchad Omier. It's all about, is he given the opportunity to make his presence felt? And so I think if think if he does that, he's playing at such a consistent level right now where I think, good things happen when they play through 5. If they play through him, either he's going to do what he needs to do or he's proven to be a great passer out of double teams. Other guys will get open looks and knock them down. The second key to the game is really just getting into their bench and hoping that, you're at home in this game, so the game's going to be officiated different than it was when you were on the road. But having that aggressive mindset, because there's a noticeable drop-off pretty much once you get through their starting 5. You've got George. That is a nice player. He led them in scoring over the weekend against Georgia Tech. But once you get through pretty much their initial 5, there's a noticeable drop-off. And so, especially if Nigel Pack isn't playing, if you can get into their bench and make Jim Larinaga use his reserves, that's a good thing. Also, because he doesn't trust his bench and their bench isn't as good, he'll probably roll with his starters, but make them, relax defensively and try to outscore you. And I just don't think Miami is built this year to outscore you. They have been in years past, and when they've beaten you, they've outscored you. But I don't think, that's possible in this game. And so it starts with Elliot Cadeau and R.J. Davis putting consistent pressure on the rim. That's probably the one thing that they could have done a better job in the win over Virginia. It felt like, especially for R.J. Davis, he just settled oftentimes for perimeter shots. But if Carolina can get downhill, stay in attack mode, get them in foul trouble, and get to the foul line, you could run into a situation where they just don't have enough dudes to be competitive with you over the course of 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, look, even if they do have Nigel Pack back for this game, you're still only going 6 deep. I mean, yeah, this is a team that, they will play other guys, but most of those guys, when they come on the floor, they're liabilities on the offensive end for sure. And defensively, there's nobody that can really take over the game. So, yeah, this is a team that, coming into the year, we kind of knew this was a 6-man team. And now, if Pack doesn't play, it's basically their starting 5 that they have to roll with. That's where the majority of their production offensively comes from. So, yeah, if you can get them into foul trouble and get them into their bench, it's going to set you up with a great chance to win. And you're right. And I think part of it, going into games against Virginia, people hear so often that about the Pack line defense and how good it is at taking away the dribble drive and everything like that. And it feels like Carolina sort of read into that in the matchup on Saturday. This is a team that you should be able to go after. You're right. Do what your strength is. And we've said this the entire year. This is the strength of this Carolina team. It's really the guards for sure, is getting downhill and getting to the basket. Elliot Cadeau, that's where he's most comfortable. He's not a guy, we've seen it, he's not a guy that can stand out from beyond the arc and just knock down shots consistently. It's not there. Every once in a while he may hit one, but he needs to attack the rim. R.J. Davis, you're coming off a game where you tried to, hit those shots from the outside where you create just enough space for yourself and they weren't falling. And this is part of a trend that we've seen as the year has gone along, where those outside shots are not falling the way that they were at one time during the season. So you need to put that pressure on the rim. If you do that in this game, look, again, Omier is a guy, he is a solid defender, but he's only averaging 0.7 blocks per game. So it's not like he's a guy that's done an immaculate job at sealing the rim like some of the other guys, similar to, Ryan Dunn, who you just saw, guys like that. So I definitely think this is one of those situations where if Carolina attacks the rim, they should be able to either finish inside or get to the foul line pretty often. And as you mentioned, if you get into that bench, it could be over quicker than Miami expects it to be, because they just don't have the talent there.
Rebounding is always a big part of these games. It was close in the first match. Carolina was +5. on their way to out-rebounding opponents for the 16th straight game. So it's not the final key. To me, the final key is defend the three-point line, because if Miami makes threes, that's what puts them in a position to pull the upset. They made 5 in the first half in the first matchup, and that was a big reason why they led by 1. They were just 1 for 12 on threes in the second half, a big reason why they lost. And if Pack plays, it's harder because there will be more space on the court for them to play 4 around 1. And they'll even do some 5-out action with Norchad Omiir's ability to take perimeter shots. If Pack can't play, then the court becomes a little bit more compressed, easier to defend the three-point line. But you still got to account for their best players are capable of getting hot from 3. Like Matthew Cleveland and Wooga Poplar, I mean, both shoot at least 36% or better from behind the three-point line. So they're capable. And so Carolina needs to be aware of that. They held Virginia to 2 of 14 perimeter shooting on Saturday, and Virginia doesn't take threes unless they like them. So that meant Carolina did a really good job contesting shots and making them uncomfortable out there behind the three-point line. And that same perimeter defense needs to be on display tomorrow night at home.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to the first game, I mean, the second half, Carolina made sure that they took everything away from beyond the arc, said, look, if you're going to beat us, you have to beat us inside. And they also did a good job of taking away Norchad Omiir. So it made it incredibly difficult on this team. Yeah, I mean, you look, I mean, Pack, Poplar, guys that average over 5.5 threes per game from the outside, or three-point attempts, not makes. 4.2 per game for both Bensley Joseph and Keyshawn George. I mean, that's where their offense is. The majority of these guys, they shoot more threes than they do, shooting from inside the arc. So I think that's what Carolina has to prepare for. I think it should be the same game plan as the first game, or at least in the second half of that first game, which is, look, if they're going to beat you, make them have to drive the lane and beat you inside, especially with your bigs playing the way that they are when it comes to protecting the rim, because I feel like you should be pretty confident that if these guys are driving inside, your big men are going to be able to win that matchup more often than not. So yeah, I mean, Pack, I think, determines a lot of this, because Carolina in the first game, that was the guy that really killed Carolina from beyond the arc. If he plays in this game, I mean, Carolina's got to do everything they can to take him away. And what they did in the second half of the first game was double him. I think that's something that you may have to throw out there even in the first half, especially if he gets off to a solid start. But if he doesn't play in this game, you still can't adjust the way that you're playing and try to, and think in your mind that Keyshawn George is going to be a guy that's not going to throw up a lot of threes as well. That's his game. That's his strength. Maybe even more so, to be honest with you, than Nigel Pack. So, I'm interested to see what Carolina does, what kind of mindset they bring if Nigel Pack isn't out there on the floor. But I still think it'll be an aggressive one to try to take away that three-point.
Carolina enters with a 91.6% chance to win the game. It feels like we're playing Boston College tomorrow night, but it is Miami. Who wins the game and why?
Yeah, I think Carolina wins. You mentioned a game at home, which is different from the last Monday game where you had to go on the road, hostile environment, and you found a way to win that game and win it comfortably. This is a Miami team that, they want to find a way to pull an upset, to end their season on the right note in what's been a rough year. But especially if they don't have their best player, and even if they do, he's not going to be at 100%. I think this strongly favors Carolina. You've seen the depth that Carolina has. They're going to have a major advantage in that area in this game. I just think, the way that Carolina played defensively in that game against Virginia will carry over into this one. I think you'll see, RJ Davis respond very well after, one of the worst shooting performances that we've seen from him in his entire career. I think you'll see him attack the basket. I think you'll see Elliot Cadeau attacking the basket. And I think, Armando Bacot will continue to play well inside and have a really good game, match up well even better this time than he did in the first matchup with Norchad Omier. I think they'll take Omier out of the game earlier than they did in that first matchup as well, and I think that'll make it extremely difficult for Miami to hang around in this game. I like Carolina to win, and to win comfortably, probably somewhere in the 15 to 20 point range.
Yeah, I think Carolina rolls. I think this team is refocused, they're re-energized. They know what's at stake, they know what's on the line. And for guys like Armando Bacot and RJ Davis that talk a lot about legacy, winning an ACC regular season title goes a long way towards leaving a positive legacy at Carolina. You can't do that if you lose at home to a team that's lost 6 straight. So I think Carolina gets the win to get back-to-back wins coming off the week off. Well, no matter what happens, we'll have you covered. HeelToughBlog.com, where the preview of the game will be live on the website Monday morning. So head over there to get you to get ready for the preview of the game. I'll be back that evening writing the recap no matter what happens as I continue to take you through the hoop season. Any news and notes that come out of the Mac Brown's football program, Anthony has you covered. Recruiting, the combine gets underway this week, a big week for Drake May and some other guys that will be in attendance for that. So we'll have you covered on that front. Simply put, check the website, HeelToughBlog.com, every single day. The latest Carolina basketball, Tar Heel football coverage. As for the podcast, guys, you know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. Simply search the Four Corners Podcast and we will pop up. Or there we do encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any editions of the show throughout the remainder of the basketball season. Well, with that, guys, that is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank Anthony for hosting with me. And as always, go Tar Heels.